Hi, welcome to the Mission Mediation Podcast brought to you by the PACT. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're joining us from. Of course, you're probably watching this on live on LinkedIn or on YouTube or maybe on some WhatsApp message that's been forwarded to you. But thank you so much for joining us because this is a very, very special episode on the Mission Mediation Podcast. We've had so many guests, mediators, lawyers, business folks joining us on the Mission Mediation Podcast. But today's guest is special. Of course, we have the Attorney General for India, Mr. R. Venkataramani, joining us today. Of course, it's a tremendous gift. I consider this so because it feels like we're doing some good work at the Mission Mediation Podcast that we finally have you to speak to us about your vision for mediation. So just want to say a quick hello to you and thank you for joining us.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Of course, joining us as my co-host today is Soni Singh. She's an advocate with over 20 years of experience based in Delhi right now. She's also a qualified IMI mediator and spends a lot of time counseling her clients that there are different ways to resolution. Right? She's one of those lawyers who's not afraid to introduce her clients to collaborative forms of dispute resolution. That where you don't have to always be just opening the door that leads you to arbitration or litigation, and that there is another door there. There is another door which you could explore while you're trying to find justice. While you're trying to find peace, while you're trying to find closure to the dispute, to the conflict that troubles you. And so, Soni, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast as my co-host.
Thank you, Jonathan, for letting me do this and having the privilege of being with AG sir here.
In fact, I'm joined by a younger generation of the bar, which by itself is a great matter of called enthusiasm, and then continued engagement in this activities. And the more we see people like Soni Singh committed and with passion, I think it's a good augur. So I welcome her on your behalf.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Of course, the Mission Mediation Podcast is meant to simplify mediation in India. It's meant to showcase mediation in India to users, to lawyers, to judges, to the business folks who can really. Basically, we're trying to reach out to every possible stakeholder who's going to make mediation happen in India as a profession. Because it is something we've been plowing the fields for the last, I would say, 2 decades to make mediation happen in India. And it's finally reached its time, but there's still a lot to be done. And we need every stakeholder possible to kind of come in there and do their part in taking mediation forward. So I'm very excited about this space. Of course, AG Sir I'm not going to be spending my time and embarrass AG Sir by introducing him to you. He's got the biggest position there. By the way, I've learned one big thing while researching on the Attorney General for India. You have to get your preposition right. It's not off, it's for. That was what Soni reminded me almost every day. So on that note, we want to get started with you, sir. In fact, you completed 48 years, I believe, last month as a lawyer, someone who enrolled in 1977. You've come a long way. You spent over 42 years in the Supreme Court. Of course, you've held so many positions in the Law Commission of India as well. But today, of course, you hold this very important position as the Attorney General for India. I want to kind of take you back to maybe your law school days, if you don't mind, when, and maybe then related to what's happening today. Back in the 1970s, I don't know how much mediation was spoken about as a dispute resolution process. And today, of course, there's so much momentum. There are so many people putting their hands together to make this happen. I believe mediation has come a long way. I believe India is finally ready for mediation as a profession, as a professional service. How do you feel about it? Do you feel we are ready? Do you feel we've come a long way since your law school days in 1970s and practice days back then to the time now?
When you talked about my law school days, the 70s were more politically charged atmosphere in our country.
Yes.
The left the left movement, the youth will engage in left movements. And Professor Madhav Menon was my teacher in the Pondicherry Law College where I studied. So he introduced a legal aid program in which students will participate every week.
Yes.
So that is how probably many law schools later began to look at legal assistance to the vulnerable sections of a community. And I think that probably was one of the laying foundation that laid later in point of time to understand the complexities which we have poured into the legal and justice system. We have poured too much of complexities into the legal system. The way we are drafting laws, and we always think every difference or disagreement or an issue should be resolved only by court or by bodies which are akin to a court. That thought is deep in our mind, and then we struggle with making the courts and the tribunals really functional. We struggle with all of that. We don't get probably people who are suitable for this position. We have again questions of overloading. All that happens. So it's important for us when we talk about mediation to say we must say goodbye to a good extent to the idea that differences and disagreements between people should and can be resolved only by a court system.
Mm-hmm.
We must probably give it up to a large extent. Unless we are ready to give it up, I do not know how mediation will become the real backbone of our having an institution whereby participation of people without any inhibition, you said, look here, I have done what I need to do. So we need to move away from that. The other thought is the idea of mediation has been somewhere coupled with arbitration and conciliation. So you have put all these things together in a basket called the ADR. And that again was only an antithesis to the existing court system. If the existing court system is a thesis, then we wanted ADR as the antithesis.
Yes.
Now, I don't think mediation should probably be in the company of arbitration or conciliation. They have their own norms and rules, principles, which do not admit of what called the flexibility involved in human mind and the human participation. So, to answer this question, finally, I understand that all of us would like to be in peace, and pursuit of peace is a basic human nature. So, what our understanding of peace may be informed by a variety of considerations. But then to be in peace. So I think peace is a natural order of things, and pursuit of peace is what we would like to do. Why are we creating anti-peace situation and institutions which cannot understand peace at all? Like judges think that by a few seconds or a few minutes or a few hours of engagement with, particularly matrimonial matter, in Supreme Court, a brief engagement, they think, will bring about peace. And I do not know whether that's how it should work. Therefore, a paradigm shift will have to happen. So we have a paradigm so far where mediation was given a slot. Now I need to move away from that paradigm and where mediation will not be a slot somewhere, but it will be a canvas by itself.
Absolutely. That is so well explained, and thank you so much, sir, for doing that. Soni, if I may, I want to just get into something that sir just said, because it's a very interesting point you made, sir, about, and I'm beaming right now because this is something I've been saying for the last 10 years. I've been teaching mediation since 2015. I've been using this hashtag called Mission Mediation, and I used to always go into law schools, having the pleasure of work with around 15 to 16,000 law students now. I've always said to them that mediation has got lost by being clubbed with ADR. It's first of all, a lot of people don't know what A stands for in ADR. Some call it alternative, some call it amicable, some call it appropriate. We don't know what A stands for. I said that mediation is more CDR. It's collaborative dispute resolution. It's a different form of dispute resolution. It's got collaboration involved in it. It's a much different space, different skill sets. So I'm very excited that you've said it today, that we need to slowly start giving it its own space, of course. And that brings us to this very important point that now we do have the law. For years and years, we said we need to have a space. We need to bring in more integrity to the profession. We need to bring a bit more credibility to the service. We need to build a bit more trust with the users and the lawyers and the judiciary. And so let's have an act. And we said, let's have an act, right? And, that happened 2 years ago, September 2023. It's been 2 years now. And there's so much of momentum since then. There are mediation institutes being formed, mediators being trained for capacity building, conferences being held. But I still feel like there is something missing. And this is where I want to get to something very interesting you said earlier on. You said, mediation is about differences. And sometimes I think we are not comfortable with differences as a society, as a community. And because of our discomfort with differences, so because I remember you saying that, we were talking backstage and you said mediation is about getting into the mindset of the person. It's more than just law and the problem. And sometimes I feel like we are not ready to handle differences. And because we're not comfortable handling differences, the first thing we think about when we have differences is, let's go and attack the other person. Just let's prove ourselves right and the other person wrong. And that's been the approach. And when we go to a lawyer, of course, it's every lawyer's duty to, of course, support the client. And even sometimes when the lawyer thinks, listen, this might not be the best route for you, the lawyer wants to come across as supportive to the client. And so do you feel as a society, we still have a long way to go in terms of getting comfortable with differences and conflict, so that if we are comfortable with it, we can sit at the mediation table and discuss it? What are your thoughts on that?
Soni is answering that question.
Sure, Soni.
So it's a very tough question. I'm sure why AG sir is transferring it to me, because to make people comfortable with disputes, and that is something that we struggle with a lot, and particularly as I have understood the role of mediator and I have now started practicing as a mediator, I find that it is very difficult to make people understand that there is something beyond the wins and losses.
Yeah.
But the good thing is that once they do understand, and it does take effort, there is a lot of pre-mediation exercise, there's a lot of counseling that a mediator has to do, a lawyer should do, and even courts can encourage parties. Lots of times, it's like just a question asked in court. Are you willing for mediation? Are you willing for mediation? And the parties do not understand. They are suddenly posed with the question and they say no or yes. But sometimes I feel that if there was a pre-mediation counseling, that would really help people understand the value of mediation and the value of self-determination. And we would be able to make them understand that it is, as Sir says, like it is helpful in achieving peace ultimately. So I really feel that, yes, there is discomfort, but as a trained mediator, I feel more equipped, because I feel that the pre-mediation engagements help in making people understand that there is value to it and there is a possible of a resolution where there is a win-win possibility.
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope I did justice.
Yeah. Let me catch a few thoughts from what Sister Soni was talking about. I think we need to have one mediation literacy. So what I mean by mediation literacy, understanding what mediation is, what mediation can be, what mediation ought to be, and if so, how, what kind of roles different set of institutions can play in that. Today, it's all unconnected, right?
Yes.
little inchoate, like ad hoc arbitration. So when the court says, "Are you willing to go for mediation?" There are two things that are happening. The court plays a dual role. It imposes its authority. It has an authority. So the people say, "All right, the court is wanting us to go for mediation. Let us do that." At the same time, the court comes away from the chair and says, "Impress upon the parties to look into mediation." So it has a dual dimension to the court doing it. So if the law or as I said, our mediation literacy itself, expands and probably is able to reach every corner of our society, then what happens is the moment I have a disagreement with somebody within the family or in my work or my transaction or my obligations, rights, etc., the first thing that should come to our mind is, why can't I do something right good to have it resolved, and instead of going to a battlefield. So the difference is to going to a battlefield and then avoiding a battlefield. So that I think is what's called mediation literacy. So this literacy is not only, I think, relevant for courts, judges, lawyers, and government executives. It's important for people. So if law schools talk about this mediation literacy, and our judicial training academies talk about it, and if possible, we create an institution at the district or the tehsil level. It could be we can use a primary health center as a place where people can come, or you could use panchayat building. So we have lots of those local body spaces available. So we must use that local body spaces to spread the mediation literacy. So why should not panchayats talk about it? So why should not municipalities talk about it? Why can't municipal corporations talk about it? So every level, so the local bodies, then I think could be what called a national fever, right? Whether the word used fever is correct or not, a national fever for mediation. So I remember those powerful words of Karl Marx in his Communist Manifesto. He said communism is haunting Europe, right? It's either the specter of communism is haunting Europe. So what I would like to say, the specter of mediation, right, should become a part of a way of thinking and then way of understanding of business, etc. So I think important is the mediation literacy to come back to.
Well said. So once again, I completely agree with you. It's about, and I think you've summarized that by using that phrase, mediation literacy. I think that's the right phrase for it, because there are so many people doing this, right? All across the country. India is a huge country, 1.5 billion people. We need to share that message in different languages, different contexts, different examples, different case studies, different role models, because because we need to take this to every corner of the country. But at the same time, I agree with you, and I'm sure Soni does as well, that we need a bright spot. We need that I'm losing this word right now, but almost like a lighthouse. We need that organization right at the top.
Absolutely.
To kind of say it's not to control the local messaging or the messaging across the country, but to galvanize support, to amplify it, to make it this one strong voice that it brings in the right messaging for mediation going forward. So I think that's the I would say the future, what the future really requires for India, because I think we've done a lot of work. There is capacity building that's done. There is success. A lot of mediation centers, High Court mediation centers, Supreme Court mediation centers have seen success. But for some reason, that message has not reached the length and breadth of India. So I think this is a good time to move into a very interesting question, an interesting topic that I know Soni is going to lead for now, because you were very instrumental in launching the Mediation Association of India. So Soni, over to you.
Yeah, so that actually takes us to the next question, sir. And I like before, but I asked the question. We feel very fortunate here, sir, learning from you, and actually learning of these concepts. And I know that having worked with you on the Mediation Association of India, that you are deeply involved in this mission mediation and in this mediation literacy program. And I think that was one of the visions when you launched Mediation Association of India. So our next question is about that to you. You launched the Mediation Association of India on May 3rd, 2025, in a very significant event this year, under the aegis of your office as Attorney General for India. And the event had very insightful discussions with cross-sectional representation of all sections of the society, like practicing mediators, legal professionals, judiciary, and academia. So it was a very diverse group of people who discussed various issues about mediation. And it was really a very, very enlightening event. Please tell us more about this idea, and what do you have in mind? What do you see as the vision, as the objectives of Mediation Association of India?
Let me take you to an analogy or an illustration. All of us need behind our reasoning faculty an emotional part in our life, right? When we stand up for the national anthem, it's partly because we respect our flag and we remember freedom. There is something, an emotive element involved in many of these things. They are like the moving factors behind what we try to do for good, sometimes for bad things. So you look at what Mahatma Gandhi did in the salt satyagraha. He thought salt and opposing British, what a great weapon it was. So it was like an explosive thing. People began involved in an emotional way. So I think when I thought of the idea, you can always have a trust or a society because you want to pursue something. The level of a personal involvement or the level of the idea taking shape beyond those limited confines will always be a matter. But you talk of an association like this, I did not want to have a trust or a society which will be formed with people who have some kind of an interest in the beginning and thereafter the interest wanes away. So, and I also thought association should grow, should evolve in a period of time so that those who are really committed to it come there like the bees which constitute a beehive, right? So it must be like that. So the bees don't go there not because they have some self-interest in it. So all of them constitute, make honey by going there. So the Mediation Association of India should be like people with similar ideas and thoughts come together and talk about, or I said, the mediation literacy or mediation engagement at the national level. So it's going to take a little time before it will really get that formal structure. That also is important. You can't work without a formal structure. So after the mediation conference, I've been receiving, like you, many of you involved in the conference, receiving a lot of questions and then asking me what else next, etc. So I thought I could have called all of you together and had an MOU, articles of association, things like that. But I think the most important is the way the association should work should come from when we finalize in our own mind, what are we proposing to do? I'm just waiting so that happens. So I didn't want to take it beyond it at that stage. But now that, as I informed Soni, that the Advocate General of Orissa, who was in the conference, who promised in the conference to take the next step. So we are having the second conference in Bhubaneswar on the 28th of September. So he's inviting all of us who are involved in the first conference. But this time I am suggesting to him, at the conference, to formalize, if possible, state level branches or chapters of a national association and see how it really works. my own understanding is, if you go around the country with a few more conferences like this, and then in that way, the conference becomes a part of a mediation literacy. Okay. Then after we have this conferences, maybe even the Northeast, I spoke to the Advocate General of Guwahati, Assam, and the Northeast Advocate General. They're all very keen to do that. So Northeast has got a separate set of problems. So we will then have a charter where apart. So I'm looking at a charter not like a mediation association, not Mediation Council of India Act, etc. The Mediation Act is again a legal framework which gives an authority of the government to enable people to work. But I think that act will not work unless we have all these inputs getting into the legislation and strengthening the legislation. So the the twin outcome will be the law gets strengthened, and people who want to work with the law also gets strengthened in their own way. So that must be the outcome. So I think we have waited patiently for a long time. I think it's suppose we wait for another year or two, then I'm sure we can say the sun has risen.
We are at the dawn of something very interesting for sure.
Thank you so much, sir. And I really feel that, just a second, Jonathan, that this is actually the beginning, and it's an evolving process. And that's what we like about this. And I think this is a good way of spreading the word. Once you started it, and this was launched as the first national mediation conference in India, I think it created a lot of buzz. And today, you being a part of this, and this podcast will also hopefully reach the grassroots, and the message will go forward. So thank you so much, sir, for this.
My privilege. Yes.
Over to you, John.
I have two quick reflections. One from me attending the launch in May. It was something that really stayed with me because it had individuals from different parts of the country. I've been part of this community now for the last 10 years as a mediator, and to see everyone together, it felt great under one roof. And so once again, sir, we do appreciate you taking that initiative then to launch it, to bring people together under that one roof. I think my prayer for this going forward, and I think it kind of complements what you've just said, is we are a community, a very proud community of mediators in India who have spent over a decade and a half building the market, building capacity. But we are all proud of our own individual achievements. And I'll put my hand up and say that right away myself. Right?
Certainly.
I have done that. Yeah, I'll admit that myself. So I think my prayer for MAI would be that we can be proud of the work we have done as a nation now. We bring in all that pride together, all that work, all that hard work, all those insights, all those experiences, and say, let's build an organization, let's build an association which is neutral, but at the same time, which gives us voice on an international stage. And I think that's once again a brilliant idea, birthed by you. So thank you so much. I also want to appreciate that you have not wasted time since May 3rd, and you're already actioning, getting these conferences going in Orissa and in Guwahati in the Northeast. That's what you want from a leader, right? You want to be actioning quickly. So I'm very happy to hear this, that there is already work going on. There's already conversations taking place, because we need some tests. We need some case studies to see whether it would work, whether it would not work, what this really means. So I'm really, really excited about what the future holds. You did say that the law is there, but for it to really work, for it to really work for us as a profession, there's so much more of groundwork that needs to be done. I keep saying to young lawyers who I meet and train in law schools, I say that the mediation law is not enough. It's you, the lawyers, who are required to take mediation forward. Because I believe, and there's no hiding away and shying away from it, that lawyers are the gatekeepers to mediation in India. They are. When there is a conflict, when we are physically unwell, we go to a doctor. When when we are struggling with a conflict, we go to a lawyer. It's as simple as that. We can't hide away from that reality. And so lawyers are the gatekeepers of mediation. So from your experience, having worked in this field for decades now, what more can the legal community do to enhance the credibility for mediation in India? And what are the steps that we can take? It could be small steps, but what else can we do to really showcase and put the spotlight on mediation and the benefits of mediation for clients?
I have both some wild thoughts as well as what.
Sure, sir. It's a brainstorming. Let's do it.
Let me tell you both wild and the mild thoughts, right? First thing is that we have for judicial conduct long time ago, after a conference in Bangalore, we had the Bangalore Principles for Judicial Conduct. The Commonwealth Parliamentarians Associations again have a code of conduct for parliamentarians, etc. So ethics, the ethics of mediation, the ethical contours of mediation, I think if we are able to present it as the most important aspect of mediation, then I think we would have taken the first step. Now, when I talked about this first step can be taken, reflecting on this now, we go to law schools, we go to schools, we go to people who are bona fide engaged in promotion of spiritual thoughts and ideas, and other such centers where people go for their own peace. Like when after the National Mediation Conference, I was in Bangalore at the Art of Living Center when Shri called me, and then they have inaugurated a Art of Living Mediation Center. So if you have people like that who can also be tapped, but essentially I think mediation stands for a certain ethical framework where people in voluntary participation are able to understand their own mind, and then they say, well, this is how it should work. I think that will be the first and probably a perennial, permanent part of the mediation work. Now, on the wild thoughts, it goes something like this. Well, I suppose when parliamentary debates take place today, there is a well of the house. So people go and shout and stand near the chairman or the speaker. So we need something like that in even legislative assemblies. The well of the house should be a mediation idea, right? Certain things cannot be settled by mediation. I remember I was part of a team which presented a draft legislation to a Rajya Sabha committee called Petitions Committee of Rajya Sabha. There are so many committees of assemblies, legislative assemblies and parliament. Many differences are sent to this parliamentary committee. I think suppose some of them have a social dimension, and if the Mediation Act is able to participate in many of these deliberations at the social political level, we will have the possibility of new thoughts and ideas, emerging from these discussions. So this is something very wild thought. I don't know how it's really going to work. If suppose tomorrow the Mediation Association of India is called by the speaker in Lok Sabha and said, we have this problem, can you, instead of making people shout, can you make people listen?
Yeah.
So shouting has become a problem, a kind of a, I don't know whether it's become a part of a human nature today. Shouting in courts, shouting outside. Social media is another shouting, a space. So we need to enter all these spaces. So if those who practice mediation can say we are an alternate peace association, not a party, not a political party. We are a movement and things like that. That's why I refer to the Salt Satyagraha. So we need that emotion plus ethics plus intelligence plus reason, all them put together. I don't know how else you look at it.
You actually highlighted a very important point about mediation, and that's listening. When we talk about mediation, even whether it's training or sometimes when I am Sony spoke about this pre-mediation calls, which are so crucial to a mediator. And sometime when we are prepping clients and lawyers for mediations, as a mediator, I spend time with parties and with lawyers saying, listen, you are going to listen to a lot of things tomorrow which you don't like, and which you completely disagree with, and you think it's completely false, it's completely insane, it's blasphemy. So my request to you is, you don't have to respond to it, right? If we can listen, the more we listen, the more information we get. Because if the moment you respond or you react or you shout back, you're blocking a chain of information that's coming to you, and which means that person will stop sharing something which might be useful to you, by the way, as a leverage, as a strategy. And so just let it all come in, and the strategy is to just listen, because a lot of people misunderstand, I think, and this is once again a fascinating thing that you brought up. When people listen, they feel like they agree with everything. Listening to someone doesn't mean you agree with them. It doesn't mean you acknowledge them. It doesn't mean that you are condoning it. It means that you are giving them a chance to be heard. And I think that's a very important thing. And I think what you said about, if we can bring this kind of mindset change, a skill set change to the highest of I would say organizations and institutes, there's nothing like that. I mean, the different achievements and goals that we can set for MEI going forward are immense. Soni, I'm wondering whether you have any thoughts on this as a lawyer, in terms of what else can lawyers do, or what else can the legal profession do to really put the spotlight on mediation?
So basically, for lawyers, I have often faced this dilemma, and I do want to ask KG sir about this as well. Like, I have been faced with the situation when a client comes to me and says that there's so many options. I have met so many different lawyers, and they are trying to tell me that you should file 10 different cases. But you know what? The other side is trying to approach me, and there is a possibility of a settlement. And mostly, I am faced with a situation where people say that lawyers are always opposed to the idea of mediation, and they are a hindrance to the idea of mediation. So I personally, I have thankfully not believed in that. And even at that situation, when I faced with that situation, we told the client, go try the settlement and see if you want to come back to us or any of the other lawyers you want to. The client did come back to us, and we later, after a few years of that litigation and actually getting resolved through settlement eventually, we asked them, why did you come back to us? You went to several big names in the industry. So they said, because you sent us to settlement for the first time. You did not tell us that you should start those 10 different litigations, and it's absolutely necessary, which was the guidance given to us by most lawyers. So, sir, what do you feel? Do you think the legal profession should be standing in the way of mediation, or is there is scope for everyone?
That's an interesting question, because we have some idea about the entrenched roles the profession plays, right? And whether the Bar Council of India makes some rules for us or not, and how strictly and then honestly we follow the Bar Council of India rules, I do not know, right? Suppose tomorrow, whether the Bar Council of India rules or the Mediation Act lays down certain guidelines, rules or regulations, and that it says every council shall, on receiving a client, will have a duty of exploring the possibilities of a mediation or a settlement. And only when that fails, or there is hardly any scope for a mediation, then getting into your other professional role of taking the case as a client should come. So how do we really implant this idea that in every lawyer when every client who comes to her or him should first say, can we not settle this matter? The problem for us is we are concerned about our professional income. Right? I do not know whether that can be dealt with by any sufficient adequate means where if I'm going to earn a couple of lakhs over a certain period of time, and I'm going to get half of it at least over a lesser period of time, right? How all that can manage is a very difficult area of working with the lawyers and all that. There are many counsel who, after reaching a certain stage in the profession, certainly think that there's nothing like snakes and ladders. It must be only ladder. So we have all those questions. But I think if we start somewhere, like as I said, the Mediation Act says this, and then it becomes part of the mandate of every court. The court will ask the counsel, did you say, did you advise, did you do this? And therefore, it should be something like a recorded process where the counsel receives a client, I record my satisfaction that is not good for mediation, right? And then ask the client to go for a litigation. So if this gets even minimally structured somewhere, whatever be the opposition that we get from the legal profession, regardless of that, if we take these small minimal structural steps, I think over a period of time, that's why I'm talking about mediation literacy. That will address this question in a big way.
Absolutely, sir. That's such a wonderful suggestion, and I think we are becoming this session is giving rise to a lot of new thoughts and ideas, and we are going to record them, and it's really, really fascinating, the ideas that are coming along. Thank you so much, sir.
I want to kind of, as we kind of come to the end of this very, very interesting, insightful, and also I would say inspiring session. It's given, I'm sure Soni and me are feeling that energy that AG sir is sharing with us. But I think it's appropriate to wrap up with something very, I would say, very human, something that we can all relate to. So, AG sir, from your experience being, a lawyer for so many years, you've been probably either engaged to be a mediator or to maybe help your client in a mediation. You've, of course, fallen in love with mediation ever since your early days, and now you're championing this movement through Mediation Association of India. From your experience, being in a real-life mediation, either as a lawyer or as a mediator or as someone who has helped parties, even has recommended or given advice to parties to try mediation, what would you say are your top, I would say, unique features of mediation that you like the most? We talk about so many unique features of mediation, but what do you relate with the most? What do you really like about mediation as a process, which you want to share with the wider community of lawyers?
In any formal sense, I've never been a mediator, like a case being referred to me, etc. But there are many cases where this idea of avoiding a litigation was discussed with clients, and there are cases which did not proceed into litigation where we found other outlets possible. But beyond that, my engagement in this idea is more on a larger association with the working of the legal system and the deficiencies in the legal system or your administration of justice. We talk about delays, we talk about docket explosion, we talk about everything about courts and their problems. So when you study all this closely and you still find that we are not able to bring peace to human mind. So that is the most, persuasive idea in my mind. Of course, there are occasions when working at a personal level, I found how difficult it is to convince the party to go for an understanding of the case. Understanding comes first, settlement comes later. So understanding is made what's called little mystical, because people have given some thoughts about the law, your rights, you know something about important about your rights. So your mind is already clouded. So to take away that clouded mind, so we need understanding. So first step in a mediation is to make a person to understand why there is a conflict situation. So that can never happen in an adjudication. An adjudication takes a conflict for granted. It says, yes, this conflict is a real conflict. And it also says, I must have a procedure to deal with the conflict. So the conflict must be real, alive, and continue to be a conflict for an adjudicatory system, for an adversarial system to work with. When you talk of mediation, we say, no, first understand why there is a conflict. So the understanding becomes a doorway for you to take it further. So that's how I've been looking at it. I suppose that's how all of us should be able to look at it.
That is
my first case in Pondicherry was a legal aid case for a Dalit woman who was deprived of a property by an MLA. So I remember that case because I very passionately argued that matter in the court. And years later, the woman, she succeeded. Not only because it was litigation, but for other reasons that they brought into the case. And the court ended, and the matter ended in her favor. So years later, her son got in touch with me, and they've been in touch with me for several long years even that. Why I talk about this, the emotional part of it. The fulfillment which comes when you do a good thing to somebody, like you feed the birds in the morning, right? You see them, the squirrels and the birds, eating something which is there in the morning. So that's the emotive part of it. You feel very happy. So you have a good song, you're a singer, you are an artist. So all those things which bring a certain sense of fulfillment in our mind. I suppose mediation should do that.
That's a very strong call out, and I appreciate you doing that. So once again, using the right words there. Once again, sense of fulfillment, sense of purpose for the legal community, and for them to explore mediation, and they might, find that in case someone's lost in this profession, giving a shot at mediation might just help you find that once again. But I want to touch upon something you once again beautifully brought out. You bring out a lot of mediator training stuff without actually saying it. You're using a different verbose, a different language. When you say understand conflict, I think that's a beautiful thing, because in mediation, once again, Soni will agree with me. We talk about the why. In litigation, in arbitration, it's always about the what. What went wrong? Who went wrong? But in mediation, what do I get? Why do I get it? It's all about that. But in mediation, we get to the why of the conflict, to understand the conflict. We get to know the person behind the problem, and that's the beautiful aspect. Once again, you bring it out in your own way without using our normal language that we keep using in the mediation space. So thank you for that. Thank you for making it really organic and genuine to your experience. But I think this has been so fulfilling, so inspiring, so empowering in many ways. We are excited to see the growth of Mediation Association of India. As mediators, we pledge our support to whatever that future looks like. And as I said, I think it's about bringing all our energies, all that pride that we have created for ourselves, and creating some amazing projects individually, and bring that together so that we can now be proud as a much larger body representing the nation to take us into the world. But those are my final thoughts. But I'll leave it maybe with Soni for maybe one quick question, maybe from your side to AG sir, before we wrap up.
So your words to the young mediators and to the people in this, like a message to them, the young mediators who are just joining, and to the people, what would you like to say?
write a manifesto of mediation. Each one of you write it every day and recite it like the words in the scripture you would like to recite. So it's like getting up in the morning, looking at it, instead of looking at our WhatsApp messages, right? More. So a manifesto of mediation for each and every one of us. Then I think that will be what I call, there are so many challenges in being a mediator today, right? You go back in point of time before the law school idea came in. Who was getting very keen to get into a law college to study law? So today you find a sea change, right? Because the idea of legal education and how legal education can be pursued have undergone significant changes. I suppose all that will happen over a period of time. So I suggest for the young lawyers, we have a mediation manifesto, and then we meet as often as possible. We spend like a weekend evenings on discussing and sharing our thoughts, and then, if possible, involve a local community of the place where we live and invite them for a small talk, right? So I would probably talk about a mediation satsang in the local. So which means you become the leader, you get passionate. I find you'll find it very, very, very how changes take place. Right? So I would not like to say something huge at this point of time, but you know how lawyers become passionate about doing something. It's an important element in the legal profession. So if you can only slowly convert the coin currency conversion, right? So if you can do that, I think it's going to work.
Brilliant. What a strong message there to end this fantastic session. AG sir, thank you so much for taking time out. I know you're a very, very busy man,
my pleasure.
but this has been so inspiring to all of us. And once again, the call out from AG sir is very clear to all the lawyers and all the stakeholders of mediation that give it a chance, and you will find fulfillment in mediation. So I think on that very positive note, I would like to wrap up this fantastic podcast.
I will share with you one final information.
Yes, sir.
I thought India should be the headquarters of an international mediation association. Right? This thought I have planted in the minds of people at the highest level. I hope it works, and I hope it gathers momentum.
Absolutely. So that dream will come true. It will come true. Thank you so much once again. And thank you for joining us on the Mission Mediation Podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.